Welcome to Soccer Morning. Here's your host, Jason Davis.
Good morning, everybody. Happy Wednesday. Welcome to Soccer Morning on backheel.com. I think we're ready. Sometimes technology doesn't want to respond when you want it to. Anyway, updates. What does everything got to update right when I don't want it to update? Anyway, we are here. Wednesday edition of the program. Big one for you today. Brian Sciaretta from American Soccer Now will join us in just a little bit. We'll go over some of the more interesting story involving young American players abroad, including a couple based in Germany. I'm going to get to some news on both of those players here momentarily. We'll take stock of the U.S. men's national team with Brian ahead of those qualifiers against Guatemala in Guatemala City and then back in Columbus, Ohio. And we'll talk U23s as well with Andy Herzog with a colossal task in front of him to beat the Colombians over two legs, first down there in Colombia, then here at Frisco, Texas. Will there be anything left in the tie when the United States returns to Frisco next Tuesday? So Brian Sciaretta coming up in just a couple of minutes. Make sure you stick around for that. Brian is always on point here. UEFA has refuted reports that Euro 2016 could be played behind closed doors due to security concerns. This was according to originally Tournament Executive Committee Vice President Giancarlo Abate went on French radio and said something to the effect of, we could play this tournament behind closed doors. That was then refuted by UEFA. Now, Belgium has canceled their friendly against Portugal schedule for next week because of the terrorist attacks in Brussels. That obviously has nothing to do with Euro 2016 necessarily, but UEFA has insisted there are no plans to play matches at Euro 2016 behind closed doors. Speaking to French radio station Radio 24 following the terror attacks in Brussels on Tuesday, UEFA Executive Committee Vice President Giancarlo Abate was quoted as saying, "We can't exclude the possibility of playing behind closed doors as we cannot exclude terrorism." But UEFA said in a statement, "We are confident that all security measures will be in place for a safe and festive Euro, and therefore there are no plans to play matches behind closed doors. However, we are nevertheless working on contingency plans and on multiple scenarios around crisis situations since we take the security of all participants, players, fans, etc., very seriously." So it's just a very tense situation, clearly, with the events of last year, recent attacks in Paris, and now these attacks in Brussels, and Euro 2016 coming up this summer. So we will keep a close eye on that. If it is a question of putting people in danger versus playing some soccer matches, you cancel the soccer matches, no matter how much that's going to hurt people who are very much looking forward to Euro 2016. U.S. Soccer has confirmed that 17-year-old Dortmund midfielder Christian Pulisic will join the full U.S. men's national team next week for a qualifier against Guatemala in Columbus, Ohio, depending on his health. There was, I went on a little bit of not a rant, but I had a little bit of a discussion yesterday over the wisdom of bringing in a player like Christian Pulisic to the full national team at the age of 17. I think we had Bill in New York call us up and talk about that. Then, immediately following my SiriusXM show yesterday, we get word from U.S. Soccer, courtesy of Doug McIntyre over at ESPN FC, that in fact U.S. Soccer did call up Christian Pulisic. He stayed behind in Dortmund because of a cold, but he could join the U.S. men's national team for that second qualifier against Guatemala in Columbus, Ohio on Tuesday. That's very interesting. Pulisic received his first ever call-up to the senior national team, but was left off the final squad when he picked up a cold. There had been speculation that Pulisic could join the under-23 team for the Olympic playoff against Colombia, but he will instead jump directly to the senior team. Man, I get it, but I'm concerned about the U23s. You're taking a lot of talent that could help them beat Colombia and make their way into the Olympics out of that squad. You're sort of hamstringing Andy Herzog a bit, so we'll see how this plays out with Christian Pulisic. Speaking of players based in Germany, as I said, American striker Bobby Wood drawing interest from Hamburg, Liverpool, and Leverkusen, according to a report from the Berliner Courier. He has already met with Hamburg officials, according to various reports He is 23 years old. He scored 14 goals so far for Union Berlin in his career. Obviously, a U.S. international called up for the qualifiers against Guatemala, may play a role in those games. We'll see what happens. It looks like Bobby Wood set for a move up in the world. We'll touch on that with Brian Sciaretta, certainly, and ask him if Bobby Wood is ready to do so. Manchester City hope that Pep Guardiola's move to the Etihad will entice Lionel Messi to follow, according to reports. This to me sounds like wild speculation that really doesn't have any basis in reality, but if Manchester City is grasping at straws, good for them. If Messi decides to leave Barcelona, which he has never once said he wants to do, maybe Pep Guardiola can convince him to go to Manchester City. I think Lionel Messi in England is not necessarily something we all are that anxious to see. And if he ended up playing out his entire career with Barcelona in La Liga, that would be fine by the rest of us. We'll see if Pep Guardiola has the kind of pull to convince Lionel Messi to pull up stakes in Barcelona and move to Manchester where it's cold and dreary and rains all the time. Got 5 international friendlies on the schedule today. The international window is open. These leagues will take off this coming weekend. So you've got Croatia against Israel, Slovenia and Macedonia, Romania, Lithuania, Gibraltar, tiny little Gibraltar against tiny little Liechtenstein. That's actually somewhat interesting to me. Is that on television anywhere? And Poland versus Serbia. So some games there. Also some African Nations Cup qualifying, according to ESPN. South Sudan and Benin, Chad, Tanzania, Sao Tome y Principe against Libya, Guinea-Bissau against Kenya, and Zambia versus Congo. So internationals coming up. It's that kind of week. Speaking of internationals, we're going to talk about all of that international stuff with our friend Brian Sciaretta from American Soccer Now in just a couple of minutes. It's a Wednesday edition of Soccer Morning on Backheel.com. Stay there. Let's do this.
Welcome to Soccer Morning. Here's your host, Jason Davis.
All right, bit of a change of plans here on a Wednesday. We thought we were going to grab Brian Sciaretta right now. We are going to try to grab Brian Sciaretta later. So that means the phone lines are now open, 646-832-3909. Thoughts on anything we've hit on so far off the news? Certainly Bobby Wood and this potential interest he's getting from other clubs, including Hamburg, Leverkusen, and Liverpool. Christian Pulisic and the wisdom of bringing him into the full national team. A step that is pretty drastic, pretty remarkable for a 17-year-old. I'm not saying it's the wrong move. Ultimately, it's about whether or not he's good enough, not necessarily whether or not he's old enough. But we've gone down this path before. We've been down the hype train path, and maybe everyone who's come before Christian Pulisic, or most of the players who have come before Christian Pulisic, who were in his shoes as a phenom, a player we were excited to see make a full arrival to the senior national team, maybe they hadn't accomplished as much at the age of 17 as he has. Maybe that makes him different. Maybe he's ready in a way that those guys weren't ready. I hope that's true. I really do, for his sake, because it seems as though Jurgen Klinsmann has no compunction about bringing in a very, very young player if he has shown flashes of being good enough to play for the U.S. men's senior. And now all this is relative, of course. If the seniors national team was in a better position, a better place, if there were more players that you could consider game changers, guys who are on a level to help this team go out and win games against competition they should beat and traditionally have, maybe Christian Pulisic isn't in the team. Maybe you don't have the same sort of justification for calling him in if your national team program is in a better place. That would seem to be the logic for me. If this team had come off a solid Gold Cup last year, a couple of really good qualifiers, everything was going great, you maybe don't call in Christian. And that's the weird catch-22 of having a national team program that is suffering a bit. It might not be the best environment for a 17-year-old player to make his debut or make his arrival to the senior level, and yet you probably need him more than if you were good. So if you were good, it's the right environment. If you're bad, it's the right. It's he can contribute. So there we go. All right. This is a situation where we don't know if he's going to play at all. That's not really the issue for me. 17 years old. He's in a senior camp. He could be with the U23s. Again, it's pretty clear that he's a special player. We'll see what ends up happening. If he doesn't play, this is the other question. If he doesn't play for the senior team, if Klinsmann calls him in, runs him through the paces, and he doesn't play, and that's certainly possible, and it's certainly on some level understandable from Klinsmann's perspective, seeing how he fits in, seeing how he integrates into the full senior squad, since you imagine he's going to be there sooner rather than later, and the U23s lose, then there's going to be some second guessing of that decision. I'm not sure that he is definitely good enough or not good enough, but in the right place or the right fit to help the U23s win. And they have a sort of an established group, and he's not part of it. And there's lots of reasons that throwing him in with the U23s isn't the right thing either. And yet, if they lose and Christian Pulisic is with the senior team instead, people are going to say, hey, wait a second. You didn't give Herzog every opportunity to win his series against Colombia. You kept John Brooks, you kept DeAndre Yedlin, and you kept Christian Pulisic. How do you expect him to go and beat a better side if you don't give him all of the weapons that you have available? Phone lines are open, 646-832-3909. We've got all that stuff I just talked about on the table. We've got the Bobby Wood situation. We obviously mentioned the Euro 2016 issues with security that have now cropped up again in light of what happened in Brussels. I don't know that we can provide any particular insight into any of that, but it's certainly a troubling situation, and thoughts and prayers. And let's just remember that there are terrorist attacks that happen around the world in various places. Brussels is not the only place that have been hit by by terrorists in recent days and recent times. So just, share a thought or have a thought or share however you decide to note these things. Just be aware that there are people suffering all over the place because of extremists. All right. We've got, hey, here's some interesting news. I didn't put this in there. I could have thrown it in when I talked about Christian. Apparently the kid's cousin is going to join Dortmund. So you got one Pulisic in the team. U17 men's national team goalkeeper Will Pulisic announced on Monday that he's signed with Dortmund. He's going to skip college at Duke, and he's going to go to the Bundesliga, and then he's going to play with his cousin, Christian. At first, you kind of went, oh, they're brothers. No, they're not brothers. They're cousins. So you got two Pulisic kids there at Borussia Dortmund. So that's quite the American contingent. A two-person American contingent. Yesterday on Soccer Morning Sirius XM edition, we had the opportunity to check in with Bill Peterson, the commissioner of the North American Soccer League. Everybody knows Bill. He's out there quite regularly doing the rounds, talking to the media, talking up his league. They got their season starting in 10 days. 2016 will be their sixth season. 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. Their sixth season as the NASL. They did operate. They were part of the teams that are part of the NASL, that make up the NASL. At one time, played as part of that U.S. Soccer Second Division back in 2000. Was that 2010? Is that how long ago that was? Man, that seems like it was not that long ago. All right. But the NASL heading into an interesting season, and it seems as though, and this is going to be the foreseeable future, and I don't necessarily think this is a strike against the NASL if you take into account how young they actually are, but they're going to be dealing with the situation where they're going to drop a team or two every year, and they're going to add a team or two every year. Right now, they've got a +1 over the course of the entire 2016 season because they lost from last year, San Antonio and Atlanta. Both of those teams ceased operations. Now, there's a replacement team in San Antonio. It's of the USL variety. I think the Atlanta Silverbacks are now an NPSL team, and obviously they're getting an MLS team in Atlanta starting next year. So NASL is adding, they're adding Oklahoma City. Well, Rio OKC is the name of that team. Miami FC, both of those teams set to start play in 10 days' time when the league gets underway. And Puerto Rico FC, who will join in the fall. Now, I'm hoping to make some contact with the people down in Puerto Rico and maybe get a little bit of, I'm not sure a tour is what I can get. I'm not sure what there is to tour. I know that they're going to be playing in the same stadium in Bayamon that the former Puerto Rico Islanders played in. But I'd be interested to talk to people who are running that club. Now, we know about the Carmelo Anthony backing financially, and Carmelo has ties to the island, and everything's gravy, and they've even got some pretty slick-looking sneakers that are coming with some Puerto Rico colors. Actually, I think that's a custom thing for Carmelo. Nobody else can get their hands on those, but it's still pretty good branding. But remember, this is a place that has seen a team die before. Maybe lack of organization, maybe poorly run. Puerto Rico is an island that traditionally has been way more into baseball and basketball than into soccer. That may be changing, but it's still an uphill climb. There's no real difference to the popularity of soccer in Puerto Rico than the popularity of soccer in the United States, in the mainland United States. So you have an opportunity here, but at the same time, they better get it right. Because here's what NASL has to avoid, just like MLS. You can't put a team in a market with some sort of spurious notion that it might work, and then watch the thing fall apart and end up having to start over again with either the team disappears, and now you're talking about a little bit of maybe a scorched earth situation. Apparently, the Islanders didn't kill off Puerto Rico as a soccer market enough to keep a new team from going in. But you can't have teams coming and going without stability. The league is nothing. I mean, if NASL wants to continue to grow, they have to reach a stable place. Now, I understand with only 12 teams, they've 11 in the spring season and 12 in the fall, right? think that's right. They want to get bigger. I understand why they want to get bigger. I'm not talking about stability in terms of lack of expansion. Stop expanding. I just mean that the team that they do put in place have to be solid, legitimate teams with the kind of financial backing that means they can stick it out if things don't go well at the gate. Now, part of the issue for NASL has been television, not just from a money perspective, because I don't think there's going to be a ton of money in it for NASL right now, but from a visual perspective, from getting people to even recognize NASL as a viable soccer product that they want to watch. They had to deal with One World Sport. They have one game per week on One World Sports, which is also the home of the Cosmos, if I'm remembering correctly. They're expanding some of that this year. One World Sport is making the web stream of their game of the week available to everybody, regardless of what kind of cable package you have. So you don't have to have, you don't have to verify that you have One World Sports on your TV package in order to get the web stream. So that's good. And I believe, and we tried to talk, we didn't really dive in and ask specifically because he denied it before I even got the question out of my mouth. Or he denied it. He mentioned he wasn't going to talk about details before I got the question out of my mouth. But the word on the street is that NASL is talking to beIN Sports. Now the rumor was they previously were talking to CBS Sports. So either one of those deals would be an upgrade over where they are now. Clearly, beIN Sport is not incredibly accessible for a lot of people. CBS Sports is, I think, a channel a lot of people get, don't even realize is there or exists. CBS has done a terrible job of spreading the word about that channel. So, those are only minor upgrades. But, again, relatively speaking, those are significant upgrades. Because if you go from 0 and you go to 2, that's still a 200% increase. I mean, that's a big deal. To be able to just get yourself on a national television platform of any type, for that matter. All right. So we are here on a Soccer Morning Wednesday edition of the show. 646-832-3909 is the phone number if you want to jump in. The other thing about NASL that I've been thinking about in light of my conversation with Bill Peterson, not the ProRel thing. I mean, that's part of this element of NASL, but really, I think it's I think that's a red herring. The whole ProRel discussion is a red herring. The ProRel discussion on the part of NASL and its executives, whether they be Seamus O'Brien at the Cosmos or Bill Peterson in the commissioner's office or any number of people, the entire discussion is essentially a way, and I'm not saying it's consciously a plan necessarily, although I wouldn't put it past some of these people, it's just a way to set up NASL as the alternative to MLS, and that's fine. Part of what I think NASL has done well since they came back to life as a league in 2011, they did choose NASL consciously, obviously. One of the things I think they've done well is set themselves up as the alternative league, as the counterculture league, as the underground sort of, we're the rebel league. Now, they're not in the sense that it's still a conventional business. They're still individual clubs, still trying to make money. It's still a closed league. Obviously they're not involved in promotion and relegation at the moment. There are lots of reasons to say that NASL's only marginally different than MLS. Yes, conceivably NASL teams can spend as much as they want on their players. There is no salary cap, and yet there is a de facto salary ceiling because, simply put, the league doesn't make enough money. The teams don't make enough money for them to go off wildly spending. There is no billionaire owner in NASL who's turning one of their teams into a super club, spending with no issue at all about getting that money back. That hasn't happened. Maybe it will. Hasn't happened yet. So NASL, okay, it's a different shade of gray in terms of a soccer league in America, but they have done a good job. The messaging has been strong. The fans who have taken up the mantle of being NASL fans of whatever team or the league itself have done a good job of trying to turn the NASL into the counterculture league. That appeals to some people. I mean, especially if you don't like single entity or you think that MLS is somehow a proxy for NFL owners to control soccer. That's my favorite. Sorry, that's my favorite conspiracy theory of all time. It is interesting that NASL has chosen to both be a league built on nostalgia, but also very much looking forward, and because they want to have it both ways. I mean, we're looking at a situation where you've got the New York Cosmos, the Fort Lauderdale Strikers, the Tampa Bay Rowdies, and yet they also want to bring back, and they want to bring back the Chicago Sting, and yet they also have Rayo OKC, and they have Miami FC, and they're going into places that are, San Francisco Deltas, and perhaps something in Los Angeles, Orange County. I don't know. Some of this seems a little cheap, but at the same time, MLS has also leaned on history. So what history we do have is being utilized by both leagues. All right, Bill in New York, what's going on, my man?
Jason, after I spoke with you yesterday, I gave Jurgen a call and told him that you didn't think it was a good idea calling Christian into these games.
Yeah, sure you did, Bill. Okay.
And this is why he brought it in. He's bringing them in just to spite you, we think.
Yeah, sure. I don't know Christian Pulisic. I don't know him as a person. I don't know how mature he is. I don't know how ready he is, and that therefore I got to beg off. Again, if I'm standing here with the best information I got, I want him in the U23s, Bill, because I think he can help more. But whatever, it's Jurgen's team. I mean, okay.
Well, now I was thinking about that with Yedlin and Brooks, and I heard this somewhere that if he called them in for the under 23s, those teams may not have released you guys.
Yeah, I mentioned that. Maybe I don't know that that's true, though. I mentioned the possibility, but maybe I can ask Brian Sciaretta if we can get him on the line. I don't know if that's the case or not. I mean, I know that generally speaking, youth team call-ups are not mandatory. They're not mandatory release situations for clubs. That may be the case here. Maybe you're right. Maybe this is a situation where Dortmund wouldn't have released him. But then again, it's also about good faith. Dortmund's the Bundesliga is going to be breaking. They're not going to play during the international break. Yeah, could Christian Pulisic benefit from some training while everybody else is away? Sure, but they know if he's good enough, he's going to get called up all the time. Why not be have a good relationship with U.S. Soccer? Because occasionally you may want to keep him around, and if you can negotiate a situation where Pulisic doesn't go one day, or there's an injury, and I mean, I just think that it works in everybody's best interest if there's honesty and clarity there, rather than this, well, we don't really want to release him, just deal with it kind of thing.
Now, what if we don't do well on Friday night with the under-23 team? You think there's a chance that Yedlin and Brooks play for them on Tuesday?
Yeah, I suppose there's a chance. I think all of that stuff has to be in play. I mean, if you're Jurgen Klinsmann, you want all your options on the table. If it's 5-0 Colombia going back to the second leg, they're not playing. But if it's 2-1 Colombia coming back, or 2-0 Colombia coming back, 2-1 is actually a really good scoreline for the U.S. But if it's 2-0, yeah, maybe they play. Maybe you bring them in.
Yeah, I'd like to see it. I hope to see it. Jason, thanks. I'll talk to you.
Appreciate it, Bill. There goes Bill up in New York. Good stuff from him. Let me hit Twitter briefly. R. Patrick Smith. For goodness sake, NASL combined with MLS and have a couple divisions to Pro Rel would be fantastic. No one is arguing that the idea is fun. No one is arguing that it might even be good for American soccer that to have promotion and relegation at some point. The issue is that you're not going to get MLS to agree to it. I question whether or not you could get NASL to agree to, no matter what Bill Peterson wants to say, and certain individuals within the NASL structure. Those are still people who have invested a lot of money into soccer clubs. The same issue you have telling Sheikh Mansour and CFG that they might go down, and they paid $100 million expansion fee, that you're going to have the same issue with the owners of NASL clubs. Just because it's not $100 million doesn't mean they're going to be like, hey, yeah, sure, no problem. We just spent a couple $1 million on this team. Yeah, we'll totally take the risk of going down to the third division. Yeah, sure, why not? Absolutely. And we still haven't addressed, and I should have asked Bill. I mean, I'll admit to it. I should have asked Bill Peterson. We still haven't addressed whether or not NASL would happily take up the second division status to get the thing rolling. Bill talks about integrating the divisions. It's a truly important idea. Okay? Integrating all the divisions, having people work together, having everybody moving in the same direction. American soccer has never had that. Ever. It's never happened. Ask Bo. It's never happened. There's always, if like 80% of the people are heading one direction, there's always 20% pulling in the other direction, slowing things down. So, integrating the divisions, having people talk to each other, having them work together, having some sort of integration is a fantastic idea. Fantastic idea. But if you said, we're going to institute Pro-Rel tomorrow, okay, let's just imagine a world where somebody can snap their fingers and say, Pro-Rel, it's happening, let's go. MLS is the top division, okay? There's a TV contract, there's stadiums, there's attendance, there's established brands. It's the top division, okay? So NASL is going to happily slide into the second division? A league that has constantly said what their goal is to challenge MLS for first division status? Yeah, we all know they're very far away from doing that. But I don't begrudge them the ambition. Are they going to suddenly say, yeah, you know what? To get this thing started, we'll just be second division. Yeah, sure. Why not? I don't, that to me, that's the issue. There's going to be some sort of negotiating. We're going to sit down at the table. Okay, we got 20 MLS teams, soon to be 24 MLS teams, and there's 12. Okay, are we going to split? How are you going to do that? Just think about the pragmatic issues, first of all. The logistical issues. Think about the logistical issues. Get back to me. Okay, don't give me a plan that says MLS is the first division and NASL is the second division. You fill it out with some USL teams and then you have a third. Don't give me, that's basic, just the basic organization. Give me the logistical plan. Explain to me how you convince people who have spent millions of dollars in MLS and NASL that it's in their best interest to accept this situation. All right. Again, want it to happen. Would love for it to happen. Ready for it to happen? I'm ready for it to happen. American soccer's not ready for it to happen. That's the difference. Let's go to Daniel down in Alabama. What's up, Daniel?
Hey, man. How's it going this morning?
It's going well. What's on your mind?
I didn't know I was a little late getting on the show this morning, but I was wondering if you discussed the ESPN FC article where they had polled the MLS players and came up with the most overrated player, most underrated player.
I don't know if I
want to play for.
Daniel, I don't know if I talked.
Had a bunch of other questions.
I don't know if I talked about it on this show. I did. Did I talk about it on this show? No, it dropped between shows. So I talked a lot about it on the SiriusXM show. But yes, if you're not a subscriber to that show and didn't get to listen, ESPN did a poll of 123 current MLS players. Jeff Carlisle involved. I'm not sure who else. Even though I write for ESPN, I wasn't privy to that process, so I don't know who was involved in putting everything together. But it's a very interesting poll. In terms of the overrated, underrated player situation, Mixed Discrude named the most overrated player in MLS. Now, 38 players total were mentioned, received votes from these 123. So it's not as though Mix got 100 votes. I think he may have gotten a good number, a good chunk, but we're not, it's not even a plurality. I mean, it's a number of votes that puts him above guys like Josie Altidore. Michael Bradley is in the mix there. Frank Lampard, Andrea Pirlo, Steven Gerrard, Giovanni Dos Santos, Benny Feilhaber in the top 10. So yeah.
Yeah, I was just interested in the players' depiction of who's the most overrated, and in the terms of the salaries that they earned. Because one of the quotes from the article specifically is, I'm not saying Michael Bradley isn't a good player, but not for what he's getting paid. And so now it's interesting because we're getting into this, this rift between MLS players has obviously always been there, with the DP contracts being, a substantial portion of a team's salary cap. But, in terms of saying like someone like Michael Bradley is one of the most overrated players in the league, and then you look just at his salary. So is the argument that he isn't one of the best center midfielders in MLS? Or are you talking about, well, he is one of the best center midfielders in MLS, but he's not worth $6 million. He's worth, I don't know, $600,000.
That's the thing. Like, first of all, it's a subjective. The question has so much subjectivity just in what the meaning of the word overrated is, right? So, what you're presenting is a situation in which a player says he's overrated because he's making too much money for what he contributes. And hell, I mean, that's most of the DPs, except for maybe Javinko, and even him, you could argue, is overpaid relative to the rest of the league. You wouldn't have gotten him here for any less money, but I could make that argument that yeah.
So, I mean, he has to be overpaid, or they pretty much wouldn't be here.
Exactly.
That's one of the things
same thing for Altidore, same thing for Bradley, same thing for obviously the guys that Lampard and Pirlo make it to the list because they're paid a lot of money and haven't performed. I mean, we kind of say, oh yeah, that makes sense. Except they're not. That's the thing. Lampard and Pirlo, to me, the word overrated doesn't really apply. They're aging players. You know that they're not what they used to be, but does that mean they're overrated? I'm not so sure. It's a very weird question.
Yeah, absolutely. And the other thing, when talking about the most underrated player, both the top two were Dax McCarty and Darlington Nagbe.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, I guess I get having them as the most underrated player, but from everything I read about, like, those players are actually rated.
Yeah, I know. That's the other. Yeah, I was surprised by those two as well. In fact, I think what we've established, Daniel, I got to run. We're gonna get Brian Charette on the show. Appreciate it, man. What I took away from this poll is that everybody's got a different definition, and I think that we've reached a point now with Dax McCarty where the guy is properly rated. I don't think he's underrated anymore. I think people recognize what Dax McCarty does. All right, Brian Charette is ready. We will talk to him when we come back. So much. U.S. national team, U23s, Pulisic, Wood, much, much more. Soccer Morning, Backheel.com.
Welcome to Soccer Morning. Here's your host, Jason Davis.
All right, we have managed to secure on the telephone the man, the myth, the legend, Brian Sciaretta from American Soccer Now, which has new March rankings, by the way. I was looking at those yesterday. Brian, how are you?
Oh, doing very good, Jason. How are you?
I'm doing well. It's going to be quite the 4 days coming up. The U.S. men's national team playing qualifiers against Guatemala, U.S. U23s playing in this do-or-die playoff against Colombia. So we've got quite a bit to talk about. I'm going to start with Christian Pulisic, the young attacking player from Borussia Dortmund, 17 years old, has broken into the first team. We're all very proud of him. He's our next great hope, Brian. I think we have to be careful on these fronts, but at the same time, if he's good enough, he's good enough. And apparently he's good enough to get a look at the senior squad. After I questioned why he wasn't in either one of these teams, turns out he was called up. And the only reason he hasn't joined up with the U.S. in Miami is due to a cold. What do you know about Klinsmann's decision to bring him in and Pulisic's because to me it would make more sense for him to be with the U23s, but I suppose he's ready at this point.
I think it's actually a less pressure environment right now to be with the the full national team. I mean, they have plenty of options. They're going against the Guatemala team they should beat. There's a lot of players in form. The U23s are in a dogfight right now, and look, and the thing about it is like that's 2 games to determine that team's fate, and if it, and the thing is he hasn't played with any of those guys, so it's kind of starting to walk in like a game in a 180-minute game over 2 legs, where every minute matters, versus Guatemala, where there's more likely to be some garbage time here and there, potentially in the second leg.
Fair enough.
And on top of that too, I think the cold thing is good for him. I mean, I talked to Alejandro Bedoya in my interview yesterday. He talked about Christian Pulisic. He's like, the hype machine has to be turned down for these guys. No matter how talented they are, you don't want to hype somebody up to be like the next savior of the national team or the next guy who's going to be given the keys to the team at like 18 years old. You want to bring him in. They've rushed a lot of guys through the system, and sometimes, even before Klinsmann, and sometimes it hasn't always worked out. Mentally, sometimes these guys, they get too much too fast, and we can go with Freddie Adu, Gabriel Busamunde, Julian Green, although it's probably too early to mention him in that kind of realm, but still, we're talking about guys, all these great hopes, and they were all given caps at very young ages, and so it's and it's not unprecedented either. I mean, Jonathan Spector played for Manchester United in the Champions League game at 18, and that was very, very much hype for those people old enough to remember. So it's good to bring them along at a slow and steady pace, and give them tastes and little momentum with the cold. Now he's going to come into Columbus. He's not going to have to go down to Central America. He's going to take like a half, as opposed to a full 10 days worth of a national team camp. I think it's kind of working out better in this regard.
Okay, we're having a bit of an issue with your phone, Brian, but I think it maybe came back there at the end. So all right, so Christian Pulisic is and again he's 17. So pretty much anything he does at this age is bonus. You're just trying to make sure you don't ruin him before he gets to his maturity. So I suppose at this point we'll have to trust Klinsmann, and it does make sense, as you said, that maybe the senior squad is a less pressurized environment. Let's talk about a player who's in that senior squad as well, Bobby Wood, currently in the 2 Bundesliga with Union Berlin. Looks like he's ready for a move. He's got according to reports, it's interest. Now, you and I talked about before we came on. What does that mean? Who knows? Although I did read that he has actually met with somebody from Hamburg. Bobby Wood, I mean, he's good enough at this point, right?
You have to think like he's another season in the 2 Bundesliga is going to be more of the same. He's been in that league now for quite some time, and now he's gradually done better and better and better. And look, he's the 3rd in the league in scoring, so there's only 2 spots up to go from there. You like to see him in a promotional race, but I don't really think that that's really worth it. I mean, he's scoring for a team that's not that good, which is even harder to do. So if he wants to keep challenging and pushing himself, there's always the run the risk of stagnation, and I think that's he's running that at Union Berlin. He's one of the guys I definitely think is kind of ready for something else and something different.
Well, Brian, I'm sorry to stop you there, but I think for a lot of us the question is, okay, what's his level? I mean, again, Hamburg's a club in the Bundesliga who's having trouble scoring. It makes sense. You bring in a forward and a guy who can put the ball in the net. Also mentioned Leverkusen, which we know what they've got as they try to rebuild themselves, and then Liverpool mentioned because apparently Jurgen Klopp and his scouts attended a Union Berlin game and were very impressed with Bobby Wood. I mean, is there a best case scenario? Is it just about the highest level, or how concerned should we be about whether or not he's going to get playing time at 23?
Well, I think he can get playing time if the coach really likes him. He needs to go to too many Yanks have gone to a team where like they go there and then all of a sudden there's a coaching change, and then all of a sudden the person who really wanted them doesn't really want the new guy doesn't want him as much. It's best to go he can get playing time anywhere as long as if the coach really likes him and his job is secure and there's and he's going to be relied on to be a big scoring option too. So I think it's not so much about the level as it is about like the system and the coaching and stuff. And look, the more options he has, the better. He's going to have a chance to sit down and really think about things, lay out all the options on the table, and carefully evaluate all the factors, as well as things like financial concerns, which fans don't really take into consideration. But players, it's their livelihood, so they do. So we'll see. I think I think he could survive. He could do very well at a very good team. If the team is not bringing him in as a luxury item, as a guy who can really come in and they're looking to fix a scoring problem. I'm confident with his ability.
Something that's come up with these two rosters, the U23s and the senior roster, as they both play important games. Obviously, the challenge facing the senior team significantly less than what the U23s are facing. Brian, do you have any insight into whether or not clubs are not required to release players for U23 call-ups, or is that a FIFA?
Clubs are never required to release a player for a youth national team game, whether or not it's on a window or not.
Did that have any impact on Klinsmann and Herzog's decisions? Because I think for a lot of people, the notion that John Brooks isn't with the U23s. Look, he is a senior level player. We know that, but why not give Herzog every opportunity to beat Columbia?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, look, I think that the U.S. team has center backs in addition and right backs in addition to DeAndre Yedlin that can contribute to this team. But look, it's clubs act in finicky ways. Going down to Columbia is a tough, rigorous game. Those series are intense, and maybe the clubs just feel like only take them for what you need, and we don't want them to they don't want these players overtaxed. Brooks is in the middle of a Champions League hunt. I'm sure that if they could block his senior team release, they would like to do that. So they're probably not going to do anything more than they don't have to do. Same thing with Sunderland. DeAndre is the starting right back for a team where every single game is a relegation battle.
Yeah.
So they're probably not going to do anything that they don't have to do as well. Clubs generally are bothered by national team. They like them when the player's not getting games, and sending them away to the national team is great when the guy can get some minutes. But when he's a regular player, they tend not to like it. So I think that those do factor in some things too, but. At the same point, I'm not completely closing the door that there could be some last-minute changes here and there between the two teams.
So how do you imagine? This is all speculation on our part, but look, the senior squad to me, anything less than 6 points is not good enough. But they have to go to Guatemala City. That suppose that on some level that's not super easy. There's some things to figure out for Klinsmann. But depending on how things go in that first leg against Columbia, will that dictate some changes that might be coming? We know Klinsmann called in more than the 23 normally to be called in for the senior squad, and I suppose Herzog could make a case if things are tight after the first leg that he needs players like Yedlin and Brooks.
Yeah, on the flip side, though, what happens if the U.S. plays to a scoreless draw or 1-0 draw, 1-0 win against Colombia in Colombia.
Right.
Do you break up that back line? If the back line produces a shutout,
That's a good
regardless
point.
of how good Brooks and
good point.
Yedlin are, I mean, if they go down there and pull off a stunning result, do you want to just tinker with a back line that just did something like that? I mean, it's very difficult questions. Whereas what happens if it's like a 2-2 draw and the back line just give up a lot of chances and the team, then they may be like, well, they're still in it, but we definitely have room to experiment with the back line. So I think it's one of those things where they'll look at definitely if they can't make any changes before that first leg, they'll look at like how the team performed and whether or not they want to make any changes, or let alone whether or not they're completely necessary. Obviously, if they lose like 4-0 in Colombia, it becomes pretty moot.
Yeah, of course. I mean, if they go down and lay an egg against the Colombians, then all bets are off as to what Herzog can do with that second leg. How important? I mean, again, I guess it's easy for me to sit here on the sideline and pick apart these rosters and question Klinsmann's decisions, particularly when it relates to age-eligible players for Herzog's team. But how important is the U23 effort in relation to what Klinsmann has to do against Guatemala? And look, any other year, maybe you're not even sweating Guatemala, but this is a situation where Klinsmann needs to build towards the rest of the qualifying campaign in Copa America.
I mean, it's a long-term thing with the U23s. I think the Olympics are very, very important because at the U23 level, you're dealing with full professionals, and the amount of chances that players that age, which are just starting off their professional careers, get to play in FIFA international tournaments outside of just CONCACAF tournaments like the Gold Cup and everything, is very rare. I mean, you got the World Cup, maybe the Confederations Cup, and on weird years, you get the Copa America. That's pretty much it. And the Olympics really gives the kids a chance, a taste of what high-level FIFA international soccer is like. And it really could, looking towards Russia, it could be like a very valuable experience. I mean, the Sydney Olympics in 2000, where they run into the semifinals, was a big building block, a huge building block for what they wanted to do in 2002. And I thought that the Olympics in 2008, even though they didn't make it out of the group, they still played pretty well at times, and that really laid the building blocks for what they try to do in at the run to the finals in the Confederations Cup, and winning the World Cup group in 2010. So I think missing out on 2 Olympics in a row really puts our players behind the 8 ball in terms of missing out on and being tested at like these kind of tournament environments, which are very different than club level stuff. So I think it's very important with what Klinsmann wants to do. Not really short term, because he's got enough players who are in their prime, later 20s, who are playing well at the moment, where they can get the results that they want if they play well. But in terms of long term, the Olympics are very important. So I think that really fits under Klinsmann's role as technical director, not so much national team head coach.
All right, so we've got a team as again 26 call ups. So he's gonna have to trim a couple of guys from this group. I don't know that there's any major surprises here. I mean, obviously you have some newer faces. Certainly Ethan Finley falls into that category. Where there is a question, a goalkeeper on some level, if only because neither Howard or Guzan have been playing very well recently. Then there's Fabian Johnson, the best player in the American pool. I think consensus is that he is the top guy for the United States, Brian. And he suffered an injury last weekend. Yet he was called up. This is just verification that he's actually hurt. I mean, what exactly is the thinking there?
I mean, I don't know. Injuries are very tough to predict when players are in U.S. team camp. I mean, I think we all remember the whole Josie is ready for the round of 16 at the World Cup, and it turns out he wasn't even close to being ready. And also sometimes too, players get called in by the national team where the medical staff looks at them. I think it's a day-to-day thing. And then of course it's also what role is he going to play? Is he going to play fullback, or is he, he's a good fullback. He gets the job done. I think if you really want to make the most out of what you get out of Fabian Johnson, you got to play him in the midfield. That's where he played. That's where he developed. He was a star for Germany's U21 team that won the Euros, and he's been playing there most of his career. So, all these questions in terms of, how do you use Fabian Johnson, and then this time is whether or not he's healthy or not. So, we'll see. I'm not a medical doctor. I'm not there evaluating him, and and it's tough to get a read on U.S. soccer when they release information on injuries.
Yeah. All right, Brian, do you have an outlook? I mean, I don't know if I want you to I'm going to put you on the spot to make predictions, but do you expect a pair of decent results on Friday night? How are you looking at this?
I think the full national team is sitting in good shape right now. Despite having a tough 2015, I think they can put 2015 in the rearview mirror here because it's been years since we have this many players playing that well for their clubs. It's a really good situation right now for the full team. I mean, Cameron, Johnson, we can go through the whole list. Brooks and Cameron. Yeah, it's a good situation. Bedoya, I guess just keep listing them. These guys were not doing as well at their clubs last year, and they're doing much, much better now. U23s, that's going to be very difficult for them to go down to Colombia. But, stranger things have happened. But the odds are against them. But the odds are very much in favor of the full national team in terms of getting a result on the road in Central America, which is historically not always been easy.
Yeah. Brian Sciaretta, American Soccer Now. Go follow him on Twitter at Brian Sciaretta, S-C-I-A-R-R-R-E-T-T. Two T's, two R's, Brian.
One R, two T's.
There you go, one R, two T's. See, from the man himself. Brian, thank you so much for the time. Appreciate you jumping on.
Thank you very much, Jason.
That's going to do it for us on a Wednesday edition of Soccer Morning. We're going to wrap this one up. We'll talk to you guys on Thursday. I don't have any real news or notes to lay at you right now. We're just going to play the music, say goodbye, encourage you to tweet us at Soccer Morning, follow us on Twitter. I'm on Instagram and Snapchat and all of this stuff. I'm there. I'll do Periscope sometime. Yeah, see you then. See you tomorrow. Or Periscope. Bye.